All right, folks, joining us now, Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, no slouch himself. Mr. Schmitt, welcome back to the show. Just a word on this thought, you know, the use, I'll call it the judicious use of military force, preserved freedom. That's one way I'd put it. It preserved a free Israeli state and their independence, but I think it also preserved freedom for Western values, what we used to call old-fashioned Judeo-Christian values, and it also, you know, Israel preserving freedom for the United States as well. Trump used force. Sometimes you have to use force in order to get peace and preserve freedom. I mean, that's what I'm thinking today. What are you thinking, sir?
Yeah, I think President Trump is the ultimate realist in that he takes the world as it is, seeks diplomacy first, knows what our core national interests are, and if you have to go, you go with overwhelming force. That's sort of, I think, the pillars of President Trump's foreign policy, which is a pivot, honestly, from how permanent Washington has dealt with things really since the Cold War. So I think that's one of the reasons he has such broad support. But as this relates specifically, he's cemented his status as the peace president. And I don't think there should be any question, Larry, that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. This was an intractable situation, not just in the last couple of years, but for the last, few decades and certainly generationally. And so he got the parties together. It wouldn't have happened unless President Trump's North Star was diplomacy, bringing the parties together, and ultimately getting to this ceasefire and the return of hostages. So there's still another phase to all this, of course, which is the governance structure. But President Trump has got the Arab states on board with their own incentives to make sure that works, and building on, I think, on his success from the Abraham Accords.
You know, he used trade, he used tariffs, he used investment incentives, he used bombs when he had to. He showed that appeasement never works, but peace through strength will when you show strength. I mean, you and I ought to get on a plane. I don't really want to do this, but you and I should get on a plane, go to Davos or go to the UN or go to the democratic socialists who make these Nobel Prize decisions. I think they'd rather shoot themselves and give him the Peace Prize. He deserves the Peace Prize. There's no question about that. But that whole left-wing globalist crowd, oh, my God, never mind. Let's move on. Just impossible. Let me ask you something else. You going to pull the trigger? Do you think Mr. Trump pulled the trigger with respect to reducing federal employment, federal programs? No one loves the shutdown. No one loves the shutdown. But there is an opportunity here to restructure the federal government. I sometimes call it Doge 2.0. You think he's going to pull the trigger? He hinted at it at cabinet meeting today.
Well, I think eventually he has to, right? I mean, the federal government's going to run out of money. I think he's going to prioritize, obviously, paying the troops, law enforcement, Social Security benefits, of course, are going to go out. Medicare, that's not going to be threatened. But Joe Biden, in many instances, raised the federal workforce by 40% in some places. I mean, and I think there's a better way to do this. I will say, though, that I don't think anybody deserves not to get paid because of the Schumer shutdown, because that's really where we're at right now. It's a core responsibility for us to do it. And all the Republicans are saying is we're going to extend the funding levels for 7 weeks while we work on our appropriations bills. So that's the choice. The Democrats have decided to infuse an alternative plan that includes $1.5 trillion worth of new spending. All of the rescissions go back in, like Guatemalan sex changes and DEI in Burma, free health care for non-citizens and illegals. That's their plan. And that's just not tenable. That's never been part of how you deal with these issues. Usually, Larry, as you know, the exit ramp for this kind of shutdown politics is a clean CR, which is what the Republicans have offered. So this really isn't rocket science, but I think if you really want to understand the psychology, this is more about Chuck Schumer and the Democrats trying to placate their base, which has become more radicalized, just to fight Trump. They're way more interested in grandstanding than governing, and that explains it more than their ridiculous proposals.
Chuck Schumer says it's going great. He's telling reporters the whole thing's going great for the Democrats. You think it's going great for the Democrats?
No. Now, the media, the legacy media, is giving them cover in a way that if the shoe were on the other foot, Republicans would be roasted for these unreasonable demands while they hold government funding and the American people hostage. So they do live in a bit of a permanent Washington bubble here. But I got to tell you, it's just not going to work for them. They're solely responsible for this. It's completely unnecessary. It's totally unreasonable. Republicans have offered a responsible plan, again, to get through appropriations bills. And you know that's important, Larry, because that's our imprint on the budget. Chuck Schumer never did that when he was floor leader. leader, or when he was majority leader. He just ended up with these omnibus bills with no input. Senator Thune is giving a path here for senators to play a role in this with the House, which is what we're supposed to do. And once again, the Democrats are chief obstructionists. I think Chuck Schumer will go down as one of the worst senators in United States history. You've had the triumvirate. You've had Old Bullion, which was Missouri's first Senator Thomas Hart Benton. I think Schumer will go down as the great arsonist of the Senate.
Old Bullion. Yeah, I just missed him. I don't know how I could have just missed him. Senator Schmitt, the Gallup poll says that the most popular, or the biggest gain in popularity, is the DHS. Okay. Secretary Nomes, you know, she's got the cops, she's got ICE, okay? And the movement from 32% DHS approval ratings jumping to 42%. And I gotta think, Senator, that's because people across the country prefer law, order, and safety rather than insurrection in our cities and elsewhere.
Yeah, I can tell you as a former Attorney General, those men and women who wear the uniform, whether it's ICE or local law enforcement, they're that thin blue line between chaos and order. And this president has proven, I spent a lot of time with him on the campaign trail a year ago. He always talked about immigration. You have to meet this mass migration we've seen, 20 million people under Joe Biden, with deportations. And so ICE is doing their job. But these folks are radicalized. They're doxing their families. They're throwing Molotov cocktails. We shouldn't stand for that in this country. We don't have to accept that. And President Trump is drawing a line in the sand. You're either on the side of law and order or you're for chaos and anarchy. So these Antifa rioters and these just radicalized folks who've taken over Chicago in many ways, and certainly Portland, President Trump's doing the right thing, and people support that. They want their streets to be safe, and I don't care what color or creed you are. People want to make sure that their kids can have a better life and people can be safe, and they also want to know that the criminal element, these illegal aliens who are here, are going to be deported and sent back. We have to do that.
You're in the Senate. I was talking to Senator Kennedy, John Kennedy, the other night, who's got a delightful new book out about all these kinds of things. He's a smart fellow. So it was, you know, you're in the Senate. Do these Democrats not understand the kind of simple principles that you just laid out? I mean, in a sense, this isn't a political matter. I mean, this is about stability and safety in the streets and the schools and our, you know, it's like going to work at night and getting home safe, going to work in the morning and getting home safe at night, sending your kid to school in the morning and making sure she comes home after soccer practice or whatever.
Right.
This shouldn't be about politics. Why aren't there more Democrats? In the past, I've grown up, you know, I go back to Reagan. Reagan had a lot of support among Democratic senators and House members. He did. A lot of support. Not everybody, but a lot. Why is it these Democrats, I guess it's the Trump derangement syndrome, they will not come around on common sense issues?
Yeah, and they won't compromise with the electorate. The American people sent a pretty clear message last November, Larry, when the fever broke on all this woke nonsense, all this lawlessness that we had seen during the Biden administration. The American people weighed in and they rendered their verdict. The Democrats just can't accept it. That's the truth. They never forgave President Trump for coming down the escalator in the first place. And this is a continuation now of a decades-long fight against really the American people who wanted change, they wanted disruption, they wanted to make sure their communities were safe. And now what you've got is a very radicalized element. You're right. Deportations were never controversial. Bill Clinton, Larry, deported 12 million people. But here we are now with this open borders crowd, this sort of globalist mindset that thinks everybody should just be able to come here and they never should have to go back. And that's just not how our immigration laws are set up. And so President Trump is enforcing the law. That's it. And the Democrats can't accept it. And I think they're trying to placate and appease their radical base to prove again that they're going to oppose anything that is Trump. But the truth is that's opposing what the American people wanted, which was they wanted this kind of reform. They wanted this kind of law enforcement presence.
You know, your remarks at the AG hearing were reprinted by Tip Insights. I don't know if you saw it. It's a widely sent around. It's the Tip poll and so forth. They printed all your remarks about these issues and how Democrats got to stop weaponizing and all the Russiagate and what Jim Comey thinks he's trying to do now. The whole thing, we'll look back on this someday in the past and just see how utterly stupid, vicious, and unfair it was. But boy, they cost a lot of time and money. You know, they cost a lot of time and money for nothing. And you're right about that, Senator. From the moment he came down the escalator, there are some people that just literally lost their minds.
Right. That's right. No, that's right. And look, I'm just so proud that we have a president that loves this country so much, that is willing to literally almost take a bullet, right? Nearly took a bullet, but all the slings and arrows that come from the establishment that was sort of hell-bent to deny him his ability to govern the way the American people want. And that's what this whole thing is about. And I like to tell myself, we have to do it with a sense of urgency. It could be, hopefully this is a longer run, but it could be that these are the two of the most consequential years in American history. And we need to capitalize on that. So this Democratic obstruction, the American people are going to see that, and they know they're standing in the way from the progress that President Trump campaigned on, and we're trying to deliver.
All right. Senator Eric Schmitt, great state of Missouri. Thank you, sir. As always, we appreciate it.